All right, welcome everybody to Virtual Career Tuesday. We are very excited to have REFINITIV and their team join us today. This is one of those moments when it all comes together. We're bringing alumni back to meet the current students, and we have an employer here who's never joined us here for one of our programs. So we've got some information on jobs, information on the company. I'll share a little bit with you about the team that has joined us today. But what I want you to think about while you're listening to the presentation, and certainly for those students that will be watching this presentation later when it is not live, at the end of the session is when you're going to learn what that special niche is when it comes to being able to talk to an employer on the Career Tuesday. Because part of the interview process and the application process includes 300-word story, an intro on your life trajectory so far. So when you are listening to the presentation from this team, pay attention to the story that they're telling so that when you apply for the roles, you can think about how you weave all of this together for your story. So Fernando, would you like me to introduce you, or do you want to wait one more moment for Christina?
No, let's just start. Let's just kick it off. Moti will start the presentation. So
okay,
you need to
sure.
You're the presentation.
Yeah, you're the driver, right, Fernando? You control the slides.
Yes, I control the slides, and Kathy is going to host. So she's going to start with the presentation of the company and our profiles, I believe.
Yep, let me just say hello to everybody that's out there and introduce who's on the team here from REFINITIV. So first, I want to introduce Fernando. Fernando is not only a graduate from the University of, from Harvard University. He does have a grad degree from there, one from NYU, but I'm going to brag about the fact that he's got an MBA from UConn. So that's where we're pulling that part in.
I'm a Husky, yes.
Yes. And he also started at REFINITIV as an intern. So for all of those students that are on here right now that are thinking, where am I going with my career? This is what you can do with starting with an internship and moving into a company. And Fernando, you have the coolest title I think I've ever heard. Manager for Sovereign and Corporate Bond Valuation in Americas. That is a super cool title. All right. And it seems like you're responsible for production of 90,000 bonds. Does that sound about right?
Yes, 90,000 sovereign bonds. And I have to say, thank you for the coolest title thing, but I would say Moti has the coolest title, the coolest asset class with derivative pricing.
Thank you, Fernando. You build up the expectation, huh? Nice, thank you.
Well, Moti, what I have for your title is Head of Derivative in AMERS and Fixed Income and Derivative Evaluations in APAC. Is that about right?
That's absolutely correct. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. And for those of you who remember that our dean worked at Baruch before he came to the School of Business, that's Moti. You might have actually been there when John Elliott was still working at Baruch.
John Elliott, that name rings a bell. John Elliott. Yes. I don't remember if I was there. Well, if I need to disclose my,
oh, no timeline.
Yeah, it was, let me see, it was, I did MBA, it was probably 94. And then I did MS in CIS, it was probably 98, 99, something like that.
So you're with us, you're still a youngin'. And for those, I know they're going to talk a little bit about REFINITIV, the company and all of that. But for those of you that don't know, they were formerly the financial risk business of Thomson Reuters. So there's the connection there. And they're a London Stock Exchange group. So I don't want to take up the time here talking. I'm going to let Fernando and get started. We may be joined shortly by another one of their team, Ina Rosales, who's just another star working with the company. So I'm going to step back. Remember that this is being recorded for the students who are on. If you have questions, you are welcome to put them in chat. When we get towards the end of this, if we have time, I will allow you to open up your microphone and you can ask your question. I'll call on you. You can ask your question yourself, or I'll make sure that we share the questions together.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. So The way that we're going to present is first we're going to give you some background about the company as a whole, and then we're going to concentrate on the evaluated pricing that essentially what Fernando and myself are coming from. And then we're going to dive into the two segments that Fernando and I represent. Fernando represents the corporate and government bonds, and I represent the derivatives. So let's start rolling. Okay. So if we go a little bit, for the history, right? I mean, essentially, we were originally Reuters, and most people, if you walk to, Mr. Smith on the street and ask, did you ever hear about Reuters? Probably the only thing that he would tell you is about the news. That's what everybody knows, Reuters. But essentially, 70 or 65% back then of revenue came from the financial and risk division and not from the news, which means that Reuters was in the business of selling financial data, right? For big banks, for financial institutions, for corporation. Everybody needs financial data, and the minute we're going to dive into those segments, it will be more clear. Back only 2 years ago, right? Blackstone, which everybody knows, right? They sense that there is some hidden value within Thomson Reuters, specifically within the financial and risk division. And again, it was about maybe, I want to say 50 or 60% of revenue. So it was a big chunk of what was back then Thomson Reuters. I skipped a step, right? Because it was Reuters, then Thomson Reuters. And 2 years ago, that was the Thomson Reuters entity, and Blackstone recognized that hidden value. And Blackstone, just the risk, the financial risk division, I believe for $10 billion. Now, 1 year forward, right? The London Stock Exchange recognized that value, and they paid $17 billion for the same entity. Not just for Blackstone, right? Within 1 year, they flipped the company and somebody got the coupon for $7 billion in 1 year. That's not bad. And they just show you, the hidden value that was in our companies and what we can provide. So let's move on. Okay. So here you can see really the overview of our company. There are many parts to the company, right? And there are many angles that you can. First of all, there is a big clientele we represent. You can see it on the left side, 40,000 customers across the globe, right? So you might think, I never heard of Refinitiv, but if people who are in the industry, and as I said, you can be a mutual fund, you can be a hedge fund, you can be even a corporation, right? Everybody needs financial data, and you ask yourself, why would the corporation need financial data? Well, they deal with, if it's a big corporation, let's say like GM or GE or Tata Motors, right? It's a big behemoth, right? That deal globally, and they need maybe to deal FX or issue debt or issue equity. For all this, you need to be in the business and really consume all this financial data. Then we have the end users, right? We have close to 500,000 user, right? And then they use various products, various data aspects that we can dive in further, right? Then the last one are a little bit more concentrated. It's a niche within the end users, the 5,000 investment firms and hedge funds, right? Really consume our data and essentially act upon that data, because gathering the data and consuming the data is one step. Then they do something with it and act upon it. If it's hedging, if it's trading, if it's maybe building a roadmap 5 years down the road, right? Maybe they have some risky assets that they want to diversify, right? So all those aspects are taking into account when they consume our data. Okay, I'm not going to get into it, but you can see the different segments of those data. Okay, thank you, Fernando. So here you can get to the competition, right? Everybody knows Bloomberg, our main competitor, just to sell the data. That's what we're in the business with, selling data. But there are some other competitors in the market. Now, when you do banking or you pursue a degree, MBA or any business related, typically the average student think about banks. But there's so much around the banks, what I call the peripherals, right? Those are the rating agencies. If you took a class that involved debt, you know that rating is fundamental to know the credit risk embedded in that piece of debt, right? And you see two companies here on the screen that represent that, S&P, which is one of the biggest rating agencies, and Moody's, right? And then if you want to trade indices, right, you see MSCI, which back then used to stand for Morgan Stanley Customized Indices, but essentially they control massive amount of indices that they issue. And then banks and ETFs and other instruments rely on those indices to come up with some investment ideas, right? Then you have Ihs Market. I know many of you heard of them, but they are a big player, especially in the CDS market. CDS, credit default swaps, not sure if you heard of, but if you have a derivative class and you covered CDS, you probably want to market. Then you have other players, again, without any certain hierarchy, but you see here State Street, again, you might never heard of them, but they're the biggest in the world in what we call the fund custody, which means that if you're a big mutual fund, like let's say Fidelity or Pinnacle or Franklin Templeton, right? You want your assets to be in custody. Every mutual fund has that. This is where State Street come in and those assets, right? So this is just to show you, right, that there is a lot more than just the banks themselves. Yeah, if you want to join a bank and work in one aspect, that's absolutely fine. This is just to show you that there is another angle. There is a big world that is outside of bank that support all these financial data, and it's very active and it's very interesting, and it takes a lot of knowledge to just manage all this data. Thank you, Fernando. This goes really into the products the main product that are within Refinitiv. The first one is Icon. Icon is our desktop. So imagine a very sophisticated software sitting on your desktop. You have access to any type of feed that you can think of. If it's FX, if it's volatilities, if it's equities, if it's a line of feeds to the various exchanges, right? If it's NASDAQ, if it's NYSE, whatever you wish to get the data from. So that's what Icon. Essentially, you can see literally tick by tick of how IBM trades during the day or any other big stock. Okay, so that's Icon. The other big product that we have is Datascope, which is the third from the top. Datascope is typically for clients who want to snap the data at a certain point of time. So let's say my colleagues in the mutual fund industry, they're not interested in the day-to-day. They need to mark their books, at least their back office. And for that, they need to snap the levels at a very specific time. Let's say 4 p.m. That's where the markets are closed, right? So you cannot do it with Icon. Icon, you usually see tick by tick. With Datascope, you can decide a snap of time where you, boom, the system snaps and data delivered to you in a nice big report. Those are the product. When we go to the content on the right-hand side, we have any type of content that you can think of. So my colleague and myself are part of the first one, which is evaluate pricing operation. And you have reference data, which is all the terms and conditions that are relevant to any asset type, right? So let's say if we pick bonds, you need the maturity date, the currency, the issuer, the rate. All this is reference data. Obviously, that's part of our content. Benchmark, right? You want to know how the risk-free rate behaves. So you can choose one point on the curve, or you can use a benchmark, right? Which means those points of the curve, okay? We'll move on, obviously, because I really don't have time to touch on each type. This is the evaluated pricing that you see in front of you. This is essentially what we cover. Why do you need even evaluated pricing? Why do banks need us? Because when you're a big player, right, and you want to know, okay, I have 100 stocks of IBM. It's easy to know what's your book, what we call the book is worth, which is the portfolio. You just go to the stock exchange, get the IBM level, number of assets that you have, and you know. But when it gets to over-the-counter instruments, Fernando, do you mind flipping back again? Sorry. When it gets to over-the-counter instruments, you don't have that pure market environment, which is the exchange. You rely on vendor as Fernando and myself. If the exchange is eventually going to be develop markets to cover all those over-the-counter instruments, Fernando and I will have to find something else to be in business. But essentially, that's what we cover. So from left to right, we'll start with the second column. Those are municipal bonds that our colleague cover. We have sovereign and corporates that Fernando and team covers. We have MBS and securitized products, essentially instruments that have a collateral, right? So this is another silo. OTC derivatives that I represent. And the last one are bank loans, which are syndicated bank loans. So each asset type has its own asset type leader, and we're the same person. Okay, those are really the clientele or segments of the clientele that interested in our prices. First of all, sell side, right? Risk management, right? They need to know what is the risk exposure. To know what's the risk exposure, they need to know what the assets that they own worth, and they have to do some analysis on those assets to estimate the risk. Next one are asset managers, right? Asset managers, as I said, have to mark their books on a daily basis. They go to the stock exchange, but for over the counter, they come to us. They get all the information from us. Auditors, that's essentially the four-letter word that every investment banker is afraid of. Why? Because those are the people who take off the gloves and really check that what you do is based on their expectations. And if you target XYZ risk, deviate from that, right? You need to really maintain that. And how do auditors do that? Again, they rely on our data to measure what they're doing. Okay, we have some other wealth managers, obviously, and fund admin that I touched upon before, such as State Street. Let's move on. Okay, so if you took even one pricing class, any derivatives or basic asset types in the financial world, I learned at least one basic concept, which is for evaluation, you need few parts. You need a model, no matter what asset type, right? You need terms and conditions, and you need market data. So some are obvious, right? For equity, it's straight on the exchange, no need to sweat too much. But you need some information about the equity. You want the spot price. You want to know if it pays dividend, right? That's going to change your evaluation. But when it gets to OTC instruments, it makes it a little bit harder, right? So if I pick on a bond, right, you need to know all the terms, as I said, the effective date, the accrued interest, the maturity date, the rating, is there any option embedded, right? All those things you need to know. If I jump to derivatives, obviously there are various of assets. So let's pick one probably all of you familiar with is the equity option, right? We all know Black-Scholes, right? It requires certain parameters. You need to have spot price, strike price, maturity date, right? So all those things are the inputs that you need for your evaluated price. Now, other things also impact the price itself. If it's news about the company, if you compare it against the comparable instruments, right? If you look at the primary market, the evaluator has to put the input themselves. This is not a science. It's not a formula that you can build and have robots do it. It's an art. That's where the evaluator comes in.
Yes, I can take it from here. Moti, you did the lion's share of this. Like I have a couple of slides. But yes, I think Moti did a great job explaining our business, and I just want to highlight something that he said. Banks need us to operate. Every decision they make, they have to look at our data. They have to talk with our professionals. Moti, myself, and our colleagues engage with portfolio managers, traders, asset fund managers, money managers, to talk about our methodologies for valuation. Moti and myself, in multiple occasions, we have represent the business in front of boards of directors, explaining the methodologies that we use to value the funds or the different portfolios that a fund might have. So it is our business is really important for the financial industry, as the ratings are, for example, right? This chart summarizes what we look at when we come with a fair value. You know, you have the terms and conditions every time an investment banker work with a client, an issuer to work on a structuring note, a derivative contract, a bond, vanilla, a plain vanilla bond. They have a terms and conditions, when it's going to be called, when it's going to be put, what type of a structure it has, and all of that is in our databases. So we use that. We use market information over the counter. You have some debt that trades over the counter on a daily basis, and we have a team of evaluators that look at those levels from the market, look at the benchmark curves like the US Treasuries or other curves around the world. We look at credit default swaps to evaluate the credit. We look at inflation numbers around the world, and some of them are embedded in our calculators because we have some inflation index bonds. And we look at the rating. That is important to evaluate the quality of the debt, and as lower the rating, higher the yield. So investors will expect a higher coupon for their money. And all of these inputs are evaluated by our colleagues and team of professionals, and we come up with a fair value. In the case of sovereign corporates, at the end of the day, we have a 3 p.m., 4 p.m. cycle. They will use our numbers and they will put it in their net asset value calculators, and they will measure their funds performance. That affects all of us. I mean, our retirement accounts. I mean, all of us have retirement accounts. How they calculate, how they move every day, that might likely, depending on the client, might come from us. So this is a slide just to walk you through how we price in corporates and sovereign bonds, and in my space. We have a market color repository. We receive millions of dealer quotes a day and trace information through FINRA. We have an algorithm that picks a trace first because it's an effective event in the market. We analyze market information from banks. We classify them by tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, depending on the type of financial institution. For example, if there is a trade from Goldman, we will say that's a tier 1. Tier 2 might be a smaller brokerage house, can be Jefferies, but Jefferies is good in certain markets, and Jefferies might be tier 1. And we use all this data to value a bond. And some issuers like Amazon or Apple, they have 50, 60 bonds, but not all of them trade. So our models generate an issuer curve to be able to price this in liquid debt. And that's like the value added we have for our clients, because we can provide them with a defendable price. As Moti mentioned before, they are supervised by federal authorities. They have their own auditors that might check how are they coming with a price to put in their net asset value calculators. This is about derivatives, so I'll pass it back to Moti. It's a very exciting world for anybody that is into quant and Black-Scholes. I'll leave it Moti with it.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you for explaining. So this is where the asset type that I'm part of represented in essentially one slide, and it's a little bit hard to represent derivatives in one slide. And the reason is when you think about derivative, the underlying cash flow can be dependent on any any market segment. It can be debt, it can be rates, it can be credit, it can be equity, it can be FX. So in order to get the knowledge and the exposure to be able to evaluate those assets, right, you need to have the right models. You have to have the right market data. And obviously, you need to have the right terms. Now, the terms, right, as you probably all know, for derivatives, especially, those are the typical OTC, over-the-counters, usually come from the clients because those are tailored and customized instruments. The models we have in-house, right? So we have some models for closed-form solutions, right? So if you think about an IRS or you think about equity option, I'm talking about the basic one. Obviously, that's going to be easy to solve, and the most efficient way would be through a closed-form solution. But then as you get up the ladder of complexity, right, and you get into baskets or what we call structured notes, and I don't know if you ever saw that instrument or learn about it, but essentially it looks like a regular bond. But when you look under the hood, the cash flows depend on, let's say, the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100 or both, or the worst of, etc., which is a very exotic and nice and juicy instrument. And we can do it as well, obviously not with the closed-form solution, but we need some kind of stochastic model to cover those. The team here in the US has 3 people and an operations leader. We're currently looking for a 4th member. So if you graduate already and want to apply, I'm going to post the position on the chat. So feel free to apply. And the same structure that Fernando described goes for derivatives. Or any of the other 5 asset types. If you remember, I showed you those asset types. We exist in the same team, the same structure, but located globally in different countries to cover different regions, different time zone. Here, we all located in 3 Times Square when there is no unexpected events like the COVID. Right now, obviously, we all work from home. I'll let Fernando cover first the internship, and then I'll post the full-time position in the chat and see, and then probably we can jump to Q&A. So Fernando, it's you for the internship.
Okay, thank you, Mori. Yes, so as Kathy, Tricia, we posted a role for a summer intern. It's a 10-week program, and we usually hire between 10 to 12 interns in the US, and they work with multiple asset classes. We try to give them a good reasoning of all the asset classes. They work for securitized products, they work for governments and corporates, they work for derivatives, they work for the client lead, which Christina, they work with compliance. And the first stage of the program, we normally train them in the multiple asset classes. There are a few presentations, and then we give them a hands-on project. I was an intern before, and I stayed here and moved to the ranks. Some of our interns end up in banks, in investment banks, or other hedge funds or type of financial institutions. Some of them go to to pursue other careers, but we are lucky that this is the 11th year that we have this program, and we have been very successful. So I will close the presentation to move to a Q&A, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you both for explaining all of that. I do want to ask a question about the internship, Fernando. So when people are applying for that, they're not necessarily saying I'm interested in 1 or 2 of these sections, right? They're applying for the role, and then within that role, they can work in the different sections. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we normally, depending of your background, we will assign an intern to an asset class. if there is an intern with like a lot of experience in Black-Scholes, modeling, quant with experience with a Python, they're likely to go with Moti, for example, somebody that knows more about credit or it's interested more in corporate debt, they might end up working for in my team. So it depends, but that doesn't mean if like somebody's working with Moti doesn't want to and wants to learn about another asset class that securitized, we're very flexible with that.
All right. So in that intro, Christina is joining us. In the interview and in the application process, I know we talked at the front side of this about that 300-word intro about your life trajectory so far. So we do have both graduate and undergraduate students who will be watching this. So can you talk me through just a moment or two about like what you'd be looking for in that story? Like what are you hoping to hear from them?
I think it's important to be able to use the cover letter to have an edge over other candidates so we can know more about them. In past internships, we receive as many as 1,000 applications, and sometimes the skills are exactly the same, and it's very difficult to differentiate. So I will strongly suggest to try to tell us something different about them that we don't know. And I think it is important for us that people have a passion in general for finance. Like if they really want to learn, we will notice. And we normally we pick about 30 to 40. We invite them to a super day, and they have interviews, a set of 4 interviews, and then we select the final 10 to 12. Moti, you have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Fernando. No, I think you summarized it pretty well. But Kathy, what I want to emphasize is that we're all different, right? All the managers, we're not. Each one of us look for something a little bit different, both from a personality point of view, rapport, communication level, and obviously financial knowledge. But I think that Fernando was right there. We want to see, all of us want to see passion. We all want to see eagerness to learn. I've had many interviews with students, or just fresh graduate that what I call a minimalist. That they answer with one word. Did you ever have exposure to equity options? Yes. Yes. You want to see come on, work with me, flow with me, bring passion. You can see, I've been in this company for 20 some years, Fernando also many years. I still have the blood flowing the minute I see derivatives, So you want to see that. You want to see that with a new candidate that comes, both from an internship or for a full-time position, because that candidate would go through a very exciting path, and we need those candidates that can lead and can be part of that process of energy.
Right. And let me speak just directly to the students for a moment here. So when you are listening to Fernando and Moti talk, what I want you to think about is pay attention to who Refinitiv is, right? So first, make sure you understand who they are in the space of the industry, what they do. And then, like I said, that passion that you want to share, it's not always easy to get across in a letter. So take your time, right? Write it out, talk with somebody, read it back. Is it telling you just your basic outline story, or is it saying why you want this? Passion is not always easy to get across in print, but there are people that'll help you do that. And I would imagine that Fernando and Moti both have letters that they've read at some point that they still resonate with them, that the person got, right? And I just want to jump in. So Christina, thank you for joining us.
You're mute, Christina, I think.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
My apologies. I'm super late. I don't know if Fernando and Moti explained, but it was a little bit of a challenge on our side with both a client discussion and a delivery issue. So I'm just going to listen and yes, my apologies, but thank you for having me.
I mean, that's the important thing for everybody to recognize too, is that the nature of the business is not to hire people, right? So what everybody's doing on this call right here is you're giving your time to say, we have a company, we want UConn students to join us. This isn't our day job, right? To go recruit people, but the conversation we're having right now is giving those students the understanding that this is like to work here. So Muti, can you talk for a moment about the full-time role?
Yes, actually, I was looking for it, but unfortunately, I have with me only the internal link, which obviously is not used for you. So I'm going to ask my recruitment team to, and I'll Kathy, if it's okay with you, I'll send it so you can publish it. So the position is for a full-time OBC derivatives evaluator, and the requirements are, obviously we want somebody who has some basic FDIC knowledge. We don't expect the candidate to answer all the questions that we ask, and we ask a lot. However, and please remember that we ask in the way you think, because knowledge can be acquired with time, but the wiring inside, that's something that everybody carries with them or with him or her. And so, you know, brush up definitely on your analytics, the financial instruments, etc. And we also look for somebody who's going to have very strong communication skills, because as Christine mentioned, you know, we have heavy duty communication on a day-to-day basis with our clients. You know, we give them a price. They want to know, why did you come up with that price? Why is it different from their price? Sometimes you need to know how to answer those questions. Sometimes you need to know what to say. Sometimes you need to know what not to say. You know? So all those aspects we're trying to assess and analyze during the interview process. So as I said, Kathy, I'm gonna send you the link. If any candidates want to apply, we'll be happy to look at their resumes.
Okay. I saw you smiling, Christina, while he was saying that.
Yeah, Christina can share with us like her daily interactions with clients, and she's normally fielding a ton of questions.
Yeah. Christina, can I ask you, what do you think people who apply for jobs at Refinitiv, what do you think they get wrong? Like when thinking about what the company does and what the goals are and the mission, where do you see some common themes there?
If I heard you right, Kathy, did you ask where did they get it wrong? Was that the question?
Like, you know, applying and saying, I want to work for an investment bank. Well, that's great. We're not an investment bank.
Well, I think it's definitely, you know, my background was from an investment bank and a trading environment. So it's kind of interesting that you know, this is something that you would like for me to share in this audience. And, you know, within Refinitiv, we cater and we service all types of financial services that include investment banks, traders, portfolio managers, auditors. And as I mentioned, the call we just had was with an asset manager. So, you know, although we're not an investment bank, there's definitely a lot of exposure and, you know, experience to be had as part of Refinitiv, especially now that we're now part of the London Stock Exchange Group. So it's quite a great opportunity for anyone to join our team and LSEG. So we support across, you know, all verticals within the firm. So I'm not sure if my colleagues had what the LSEG structure is, but, you know, there's data and analytics, there's post-trade, and then there's, you know, trading environment. So within operations, evaluated pricing operations is supporting across all those verticals, and we are, you know, essentially feeding the machine that, you know, post-trade and traders are actively using. And to Modi's point, we have heavy-duty customers that are consuming our data on a daily basis. So, you know, where do you get it wrong? You know, it's really just sort of keep an open mind is what I would recommend, open to any possibilities. And, you know, just because we're not a, you know, JP Morgan investment banking group, it doesn't necessarily mean the opportunities and the accessibility and the experience and work that you can gain is any less than being in that environment. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And that's what I love about is when you're able to speak to who Refinitiv is with the lens of you've all been at other organizations, right? So you get to see, you know, the benefit of being there. Before I forget, so for everybody who's listening, who's interested in the internship that Fernando was talking about, it is posted in Handshake. There are 2 deadlines. One of them says virtual internship. The other one says internship. Fernando, correct me, but I think they're both the same role anyways. Because there's just actually one internship.
Yes, they are. So what happened is like we post the role, and we didn't say anywhere that was remote. So then we changed it to virtual, and I think in Handshake that created a different role. But yes, it's the same. It's the same. And I think I share with you the post. I mean, they can email the resume and cover letter to that email. That is on the post, a Refinitiv internship, I believe.
Yep. So for, you know, all the business students that are on, I think we might have some graduate students from different programs as well. We did send out the original link that Fernando sent us. I think you want to watch for that March 8th deadline, which means don't do it on March 8th, you know, have it all in, have it all finished by March 7th so that you're not bumping up against deadlines. We'll make sure that that goes out. I want to be mindful.
Actually, I think, Christina, correct me if I'm wrong, the deadline is the 8th or the 11th?
I believe it's the later date.
Okay.
Because I think we were just having this conversation last week. I think we originally, our colleague Leo had posted it for March 8th, but it's until the 11th.
Okay, so then if you're using that Handshake one, be mindful, one of them says the 8th, one of them says the 11th. So for those who are applying through that program, just watch for that. So I want to be able to open this up for a moment. If we have any students that are on that want to ask any questions, you can just put a quick note in chat and I will unmute your mic so that you can ask questions. But I also want to invite my colleagues. Judy Stewart has also joined us from our Stanford Career Center, our Career Center, but she's on the Stanford campus. If any of our team wants to ask any questions here. See, you guys have been doing an amazing job, giving us all the information already. So one more thing. So when their students are doing that, you know, the story, Fernando, I know I mentioned this. You talked about some of the skill sets that they're really looking for, and you talked about that passion. Are there any previous experiences that you find especially useful in a student's background?
I think, I mean, while having experience, it's important. I think we always have to give somebody the chance to build experience, something that Moti always points out that, you know, like in order to hire somebody just for experience, but you have to give experience to them. So I think we're very flexible on that. And when we have some interns that work in banks before, we want to know who they are, how they think, you know, and previous experience is important, but it won't disqualify you from applying. You know, I strongly encourage you to apply. I don't know if you have anything to add, Christina.
No, I think you summarized it well, Fernando. Yeah, we don't, you know, if the position is for a junior position, obviously we don't look for any experience, but we look for, as I said, more of you know, the way that the applicants is thinking, the energy, the passion we discussed already. For me, honesty is absolutely crucial. Because that you need to develop trust between the manager and the employees, and in order to advance and develop yourself, right, you need always to be honest with yourself, right? We all human beings, we're all going to make mistakes. Well, we're not machines. It's what we do with that. So if you're trying to, people say it's not me, it's the floor or the window or my dog ate or whatever it is, obviously that is not useful. So we're looking for people who can stand for what they did wrong if they did something wrong and build on that and improve and do something with that. Otherwise we're going to repeat the same mistakes. So those are the elements that are really important for us.
Yeah. And what I hear you saying in there is so important. It's about ownership, right? We've all said the wrong word. We've all answered the question and then walked out of the room and realized what the right answer was. But that ownership makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Accountability, yes.
Right. So we do have a question. Let's see. I'm going to actually allow you to see. So here has asked, out of curiosity, what type of software do you use in order to analyze data? So here, you can unmute if you want.
Yeah, I was just, because I know you guys do a lot of, you have to look through a lot of data and everything, and maybe for clients, you might have to show them graphs or stuff like that. So I was just curious because my major is in analytics. And so since we use software like Tableau and stuff, I was just curious as to what you would guys be using in order to look at the data and stuff.
Sure, Mihir. Thank you for your question. So even if I give you the name of the softwares, those are mainly internal pieces of software that probably don't mean much to you. But I can tell you that most of the software that we use for daily modeling is written either in C# or C++ because it requires heavy lifting for all the evaluation that we do, right? If it's simulation or if it's, let's say you have some embedded options, even with bonds, right? You need really some heavy lifting. So we have companies that we bought in the past that actually developed those pieces of software. I can tell you the names. One of them is Adfin, ADFIN. I think it was purchased probably around 15 years ago. It was a Paris-based team, and it mainly was for bond pricing. It was for vanilla derivatives. And then we bought another company in 2013, I believe, which was more of a complex instrument. So the software we bought was dealt more with simulation and complex products. Now, with that, we also have, we always need to automate and create new processes. If it's for a QA process, if it's for a new aspect that we want to make sure that we check. So that we have a team that specialized in and they mainly use Python to write quick programs. So if you could, right, if they allow you even to do an MBA without taking a Python, I strongly urge you, take Python. It might be maybe a little bit more difficult, but it's well worth the investment. That's one of the reasons that 30 years ago, that's the path that I took. I did MBA and then I did CIS. But to be honest with you today, I don't remember seeing a resume somebody graduate with an MBA without a Python or any programming language. So I think today it's a must.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody on at the moment from the MBA program who is taking Python? Kamal, I can't remember what program you said you were with.
Yeah, I'm in business analytics, so I do a lot of software like Python or SAS, Tableau. I do programming skills.
Yeah. So is that the BAPM program?
That's right. I am from BAPM program. Yes.
Yeah, programming skills, like to echo Moti, is they're very important, and also database management like SQL scripts. As we have in our business, like tactical automation and strategic automation. Strategic automation, we like all our software, but that requires sometimes an overhaul or multiple developers. So that's why we have a strategic automation, and we have our own staff writing codes and programs to make our life easier. that is why we require people to have the willingness to learn Python or to have Python.
And one other question, I'm not sure if we touched on this already. So right now, everything is virtual, correct? So the internship at the moment is still slated for virtual?
Christina, you want to take that question?
Yes, are you okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's virtual right now, Kathy. It's all virtual. That's correct.
Okay, excellent. All right. Are there any other questions that anybody has that they'd like us to present at the moment? Just give a second.
One question from me. So basically, I see it was really great presentation. Just wanted to understand that from a data analytics perspective, because I see you have a huge data from various kinds of products. So how about opportunities for data in terms of internships and even full-time role?
I'm sorry, Kamal, I don't understand are you asking us if we take into consideration data analytics experts for our internship?
Yeah, that is right. Want to ask, what are the opportunities for data analytics specialist in Refinitiv?
I mean, there are good opportunities. As I said, if you know about data analytics, you know about all the software that is used for that, about database management, about the statistics. So I think it fits what we look for. I mean, I will say that some of our interns in the past had specializations in data analytics.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody again. And, just a touch point for those of you that are watching this presentation after the live presentation, even though there were deadlines for the positions that are open right now, Refinitiv is now a partner of ours. So please pay attention to upcoming roles. If you have questions, even going back and watching this presentation one more time, the slides that Muti and Fernando gave us, give you a wealth of information about the company. So I want to thank all of you. I know how much it takes to take an entire hour out of your day to do this presentation. So thank you for being a wonderful alumni. Thank you for being a great team and for bringing all the information. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Right.
We'll see
Thank
you
you,
soon.
everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everybody.
Bye-bye.